Liberia was established by the Americans as a home for returning slaves, but the black Americans who emigrated to Liberia took power and often exploited the natives in a segregated society. This continued until 1980 when Samuel Doe, a native, seized power in a coup. But his rule was also corrupt and repressive, and he favoured people from within his own tribe, the Kron, and even the Mandinka people who many people saw as foreigners. This led to violent clashes between them and the Gio and Mano tribes in particular. Meanwhile, he had sacked Charles Taylor from his cabinet in 1983 for embezzlement, and he fled to America where he was arrested. But Taylor managed to escape from prison in 1985 and found his way to Libya, and Gaddafi trained him in guerrilla warfare. And there he moved to the Ivory Coast, where he formed an army of mainly Gio and Mano people who had fled Liberia, and this army was known as the National Patriotic Front of Liberia. In December 1989, Taylor with around 100 men attacked Numba County, but the Liberian army retaliated brutally, attacking civilians and burning down villages. The rebels did however gain the support of the different tribes that opposed Doe, creating an ethnic conflict within the country, and by May 1990 this now large rebel army moved as far as Gabanga. In June they effectively laid siege to Monrovia, but there was a power struggle within the NPLF, as Prince Johnson formed the Independent National Patriotic Front. Inside the city, Gio and Mano people took refuge from the government troops, but in July they entered a church and killed around 600 people. But both sides killed thousands of people from different tribes. So in August, West African states sent a joint military force to end hostilities and prevent it from spreading to other countries. Doe initially refused the West African states' entry, but when they arrived anyway, he agreed to meet them in September. However, en route, Prince Johnson's men captured him and broadcast his murder and dismemberment. Johnson and Taylor both claimed victory and refused the West African states' plans to form a government of unity under Amos Sawyer. So more West African soldiers were sent to Monrovia, but most of Liberia was now under the control of the rebels and local warlords who conducted many atrocities. While those who had fled, like former soldiers and the Kra and Mandinka, formed their own army in Sierra Leone in 1991. This was the United Liberation Movement of Liberia for Democracy, or ULIMO, and they initially fought in the Sierra Leone Civil War against the rebelling RUF. Then in September they entered Liberia and took control over the diamond mining areas of Lofa and Bomi. Taylor however ignored this and sought to remove the West African troops from Monrovia to claim full power. So in late 1992 he laid siege to the city once again, and the attempts to make peace meant very little on the ground. Otherwise ULIMO fractured along ethnic lines, with Roosevelt Johnson leading the Kran people and Alhaji Kroma leading the Mandinka. And as the warlords and fractured groups secured natural resources like diamonds, there was very little desire to make peace as they were becoming very rich. In 1993 the UN sent observers to try and implement the various peace accords, but by 1995 over 13 peace accords had failed. The West African states tried again and created the Liberian Council of State to try and bring the warring factions together. This Council of State included Charles Taylor, Alhaji Kroma of ULIMO, and George Bowley, who had worked in Doe's government. But in April 1996 they sent troops to arrest Prince Taylor for murder, prompting violence to break out once again, and Monrovia was subject to months of killings. It was however the new president of Nigeria, General Sani Abacha, who finally persuaded Taylor to agree to a ceasefire. Over 200,000 had died during the war, millions more were displaced, and most businesses were destroyed, leaving the country in tatters. The factions began to finally disarm in 1997, and there was an election that July which Taylor won with 75% of the vote. Although it was a fair election, it is said that many feared the return of the war if he lost. Once in power, he did allow former rivals into positions of power initially, like Roosevelt Johnson, leader of ULIMO's Kran faction, but in 1998 he tried to purge his rivals, and this led to violent clashes in Monrovia where many were killed. Internationally, he supported the rebelling RUF in Sierra Leone, while Guinea gave refuge to many of their fellow Muslims who fled after Taylor gained power. Guinea then helped to form Liberians United for Reconciliation and Democracy and invaded in 1999, starting the Second Civil War. This lasted until 2003, and Taylor was ousted from power.